Hi, everybody. Welcome to panel number, which one are we on? 4 for the day. This is panel number 4. Um, I am. I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here and talk to some more amazing people. This panel in particular is on entering nonprofits as a possibility if you are in academia or education, trying to figure out a way to channel that passion. We've got some really cool folk who are going to talk to us about what they've done, how they've learned to hone their skills, and yeah, basically just learn from some people, some experts in the nonprofit sector. Before we do that, I make those introductions. Just want to let you know that we still have 2 breakout sessions after this one. We have one from Linda Greenfield, who's doing hers on networking, the best way to get your next job, which you have to realize and accept that that's what it is. It's networking. It's talking with people, and also talking with people in the right places on the right platforms. And then also by Melissa Worrell, It Matters, Mentor, Sponsor, and Coach, talking about some of the differences between those things and a lot about the value that they have. And so if you have time at 4 o'clock Eastern, there's some really great workshops after this one, after our thought leader panel today. And then also tomorrow, check out those lineup. We start again at 9 a.m. on Friday. And so here we go. This is the panel that I know very little about nonprofits other than they are a thing, and that I think that they are the business equivalent of what academia is, just a whole bunch of really good people doing really good work. And so I'm excited to learn about that, and honestly learn more to kind of I just kind of see the reality of it, that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and that there's going to be hardships in everywhere we go. But there's definitely places that we can channel our passion, and we can connect with people. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can do today. I practiced these names so many times, and I butchered them every single time. So I'm hoping that I can get them right this time. So we have Cecily, Timmons, as well as Tana, Schiewer, who are both joining us, who both have just extensive experience in nonprofits and organizations. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm going to jump off the screen. What we're going to do, I'll just come in and ask some questions, and I'll throw those up so that people can follow along and see what this is all about. And then if we, those of you who are watching, please send us your questions in the comments, and we'll throw them up there. Okay. So please, let's go ahead. I'll get off the screen. Let's start with Cecily. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cecily Timmons. I run Small Shop Services, which is actually a consultancy for nonprofits, and I'm based in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is just south of Asheville. And I work with what we call in the field, quote, small shops, which are typically nonprofits that fundraise under about $500,000 a year. So nonprofits are very often underfunded, and their staff can be overstretched. So what I do is I help them, and they often don't have dedicated fundraising or communication staff if they're relatively small. So I help them on a contract basis with things like strategic messaging and developing annual reports and brochures, communications and fundraising planning, grant writing, case statements, and even sort of tech stuff like integration of websites and online forums with back-end donor management software. So I started my consultancy after my first year of work towards my PhD at Clemson, program in rhetorics, communication, and information design, which is actually how I know Eric. And I quickly realized that I was going to be unable to fit a 40-plus hour work week as a staff person at a nonprofit in with my research and trying to get published and managing 2 small daughters, which I have. So I started the consultancy largely to be able to set my own hours. But like many people who end up working in nonprofits, particularly in fundraising, I fell into it pretty much by accident. I was working in DC for a historic house museum, and then at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. as a result of having done undergraduate work in architectural history and preservation. And I realized that what I truly enjoyed about the work was actually the fundraising and the grant writing and the nonprofit side of it, less the historic preservation side. So since then, I've held leadership positions at various relatively small to mid-sized organizations, the Girl Scouts, the North Carolina Center for Women in Public Service, Eagles Nest Foundation, and the Free Clinics, a nonprofit health provider in our community. I also got my master's in English with a concentration in technical and professional communication, focusing my research on cultural values within nonprofit communications, and I'm continuing to develop that research now through my doctoral work. So I may be a little bit different than some of you in that I started my advanced degrees knowing that I was not going to go into academia, knowing that I wanted to continue working for nonprofits. And while I do teach, it's largely for other professionals through, professional association workshops, and also I offer quarterly online webinars for free through my website. But I guess if there's one thing I can just, as we start today, I hope that you come away with is that while it is not all rosy, there are tremendous connections between higher education and nonprofit work, and that there's a lot of opportunity. So I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Tana Schiewer, and Eric will be relieved to know he actually did pronounce it correctly, so way to go, Eric. I am currently the manager of institutional giving for Equal Justice USA, which is a national organization that works to transform the justice system. We do that in a lot of ways, including expanding community-led programs that reduce violence without police, and ending programs to end the death penalty, to name just two. Our main office is located in Brooklyn, New York, but I work remotely from my home in Toledo, researching funding opportunities, writing grant proposals, and managing reporting and evaluation that helps fund the critical work that we do. So a little bit of overlap with Cecily's experience there. I have 20 years of nonprofit experience, mostly in development, which is fundraising, for those of you who don't know. During that time, I started right after my bachelor's, right after graduating with my bachelor's, working for the Toledo Symphony here in Toledo. And then I went on to be the executive director of two smaller nonprofits locally. And then I started to get burnt out, which is very common in nonprofit work. And I was like, I think I'll go back to grad school because that sounds less stressful. Ha ha ha. So I was such a fool. So anyway, I went back to grad school. Originally, actually, with the whole, like, I'm going to write the great American novel. And I didn't even know the world of like rhetoric and writing existed. I always thought of English departments as just like literature. I had an assistantship teaching composition, and started taking rhetoric and composition courses, and I just fell in love with the whole thing. So after that, as I was getting close to finishing my master's, I decided I wanted to continue on to a PhD. And I did originally have the goal of being a professor. That was kind of one of those things I'd always wanted in the back of my mind. But then as I got further into academia, I just realized that it really wasn't the environment for me. So throughout my grad school experience, I was continuing to do consulting for nonprofit organizations. So I was helping write grant proposals. I was helping them with messaging platforms, like creating a mission statement and a vision and all of that stuff that goes with it. And helping with some, strategic development and fundraising plans and volunteer things. And after, so I graduated with my PhD in rhetoric and writing from Virginia Tech in 2017. And my dissertation was on nonprofit mission statements. And after that, I just kept doing the consulting for a little while until it was it was clear it was just better for me and my family to just get a normal full-time job. So I started working for Equal Justice USA in 2018, and I have been there ever since. So that's kind of the nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and I'm so happy to have you both here. Just an aside, I feel that I should share this. When I first started out doing all of this stuff, it was Cecily was one of the people that really reached out to me in a real way from my PhD program, and honestly in an unexpected way. And I think that we have some great people, and Tana, she underestimates the research that she did with the mission statements. I was trying to figure out what to do with this organization, what I want to do, and I consulted her research, and it was solid. And so I'm very, very happy to have these two people here in particular, because I think that they're all very similar. We come from a very similar background, writing and rhetoric, which is not what maybe everybody who's coming to this party can feel like. But the thing that I think is interesting so far is that we have that common thread, and that there's definitely that passion. And so before we go a little bit farther, because I think that we need to really establish what is, like, when we say what is a nonprofit, what exactly are we talking about? So this right here is going to be our first question. That we'll start off with Tana. But so it says nonprofit is pretty abstract. It can be a lot of different things. What are some of the, like, what is a nonprofit exactly? And then what are some of the types of jobs and roles that people can have? We see a couple of people, they were talking about communication strategy and research. We have educational trainings, and more educational trainings, grant writing. We have all of these different things. And so what are some of the ways that, like, what is it, and what are some of the jobs that people can do in this industry?
Well, there's a lot of them. There's analogs to corporate America in them. And I started off at like a medium-sized nonprofit, and then when I was an executive director, I was executive director of like tiny little nonprofits. So I'm going to start there in the tiny little nonprofit. The executive director does almost everything. So in the two nonprofits I ran, I was the executive director, and then I had maybe like one or two program people that were paid, and then like bunches of volunteers. And so I did the finances, I did the marketing, I did all the grant writing, I did all the fundraising, I did the day-to-day management. Like, it's like you wear like, I was going to say like 15 different hats, but it's more like, 20 or 30. It's, you do all the things. And then the larger the nonprofit gets, the more roles get filled in there. And so you have things that cover a bunch of different interests and skill sets that some of the people watching here might have. So you have, like, as you get larger, you'll have like admin and finance. So HR representatives, if you have any HR experience, human resources experience, you can do that there. There's communications and marketing. Somebody talked about communication strategy. So there's, marketing. Sometimes there's more open kind of things. Other times it's just trying to get out stuff in the media. Sometimes it's more of like a narrative shifting kind of a thing, where you're trying to change the narrative that's out there about whatever your subject matter is. Then development, which is where I am, and that's fundraising. So we have like major gift officers, which they go and they speak to potential donors, like individuals. Mine is institutional giving, so I work with foundations to try to get grants. We also have administrative support in that. And then there's actually plenty of roles that can come up in development departments. And then you have operations, lots of roles there, and then programs. And within programs, there's a lot of different things. Eric mentioned that we, the three of us, kind of come from a rhetoric background, or composition, writing, English, whatever, kind of you want to put around it. But lots of people with STEM backgrounds could find very good work in an organization that fits with their experience. In fact, that's sometimes a difficult thing people have finding. They're like, we really need somebody who knows something about XYZ so they can help us write grants to the NIH or whatever. Public policy is a big one. So if legislative experience, policy writing, then there's like direct service programs. There's all sorts of things in there. And I don't know, Cecily, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think just that when you're looking at a nonprofit, size is, like Tana was saying, size is going to make a huge difference. And it's going to be far fewer that you encounter organizations that have really deep division of duties. Most people that work in nonprofits end up wearing many hats, whether or not you're the executive director or not. And even in nonprofits, they tend to like kind of shoehorn roles in together just because, for example, they won't have enough funding to fund 2 different positions. So they'll make you director of this and this, you know, like communications and fundraising, and you'll have to do both. Or so, you know, and when you work in a nonprofit, because of the perception that, you know, nonprofits who spend a lot of money on things that are not, you know, quote unquote program delivery, even though that's a ridiculous way to judge a nonprofit, most nonprofits are very hesitant to spend money on, you know, separate types of staff that aren't directly program related. So yeah, I think it's like 88% of nonprofits in the United States, what is it, 88% have budgets less than $500,000. And so at that level, you're really going to have to wear many hats, and you have to be comfortable with that if you're going to move into the industry.
No, yeah, I really, I feel like this connects. Usually, like, you know, we're gonna do like a Q&A towards the end, but Olga asked a really important question that I want to throw up here for people, because I think this ties in well. She says, you know, I don't know which positions would be available for PhDs at start, and would we have to begin as an intern? And I think that there's this idea that because this is an education that we come in with zero value and that we have to start at the bottom. But what has been your experience, like when people are looking for someone who can, you know, I mean, someone with a PhD is someone who can wear many hats. That, you know, you kind of have to in order to make it. And so in your experience in going through and like seeing some of the people who come in and come out about hiring, like what is valuable about someone who does have a PhD that's coming into this world, or even like a K through 12 educator, like someone who like is in the classroom every day teaching, what can they come in and do? Yeah.
Well, first of all, the structure of nonprofits typically, and I'm going to be kind of broad here, and this is not going to be all of them, but it's not like academia where you have to, you know, start and move up through the ranks. It's a little bit more like business in this sense. I mean, you can apply for a director of communications role, or you can apply for a grant writing role, and that hiring manager, that supervisor is going to be looking at your ability to communicate and your ability to wear many hats, your ability to manage multiple priorities. They're not going to care necessarily that, you know, you don't have 10 years of nonprofit experience. It's not really like academia in that way. Now, if you are applying to be the executive director of a $500,000 organization and if you've never had nonprofit experience, that might be a little bit more of a stretch. But you know, typically, so many of the functions within the nonprofit that are not program serving. So if you're not directly providing programs, most of the other functions in a nonprofit are oriented around raising money to support that nonprofit. And in order to raise money, you have to be able to communicate. And luckily, educators and people with, you know, higher degrees can write, can communicate well, can organize and synthesize information. And so that's something that you really have working for you in your corner.
Yeah, I would definitely look at outside experience as well. Educators can write, exactly. And honestly, I hate that they're called soft skills, but those soft skills are things employers are constantly, sorry about the motorcycle going down my street, they're constantly looking for, even in some, STEM fields. It's hard to find good writers. I have a friend who is an engineer, and she complains all the time about how she can't find, like, she has a hard time finding engineers who are good writers. And so that's an important skill, no matter, I think, what you're going into. But also, like, maybe you did some volunteer work, or maybe there's academic committee work that you could translate into the types of work you'll be doing. So I think the key is to really, really examine the job ad that you're looking at and look for the keywords and pull out things from your experience where you can say, oh, look, I'm actually the total package for what you're looking for if you look at this, 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 and this, and not just my job.
Yeah. No, I love how this conversation is going, and especially the engagement from our audience, because I feel like they're kind of asking the questions that we had kind of outlined in a really natural way. And so this question, like our original question, I'll just throw it up here, that we had was, before someone starts applying for nonprofit jobs, what steps should they be taking? But we've already kind of talked about that a little bit, about not only researching the institution themselves, the nonprofit itself, but also this one, right? So this is from Helen. What can you do to convince and tell nonprofits, organizations, that you can do the work if you don't have that history or experience? Because I feel like there are a lot of educators, and this is kind of like what the whole idea with this conference is, that they don't feel like they have that value to translate into other places. But like, we want people to own the fact that that Helen, like, that you do, like, you have value. And it is a matter of translating it, not saying I don't have any value or I have no work history. It's translating that. And so how can someone translate their work experience to match like something like this in a nonprofit? But let's go ahead. Let's start with Tana this time.
I can actually give an example from my recent job. So our organization works at the intersection of criminal justice and racial justice. So we focus a lot on racial equity within the organization. And about 6 months before I started, the organization had started a racial equity process. So it was one of the parts of that process in hiring was not only to ensure that the actual process was equitable, but also that they were hiring people who had at least a little bit of experience. So I was asked during my interview, because I didn't have direct experience with like the exact issues we work on. Like I didn't really have like criminal justice experience or racial justice experience in my jobs. They were like, can you give me some examples of from your life of where you've like sought to increase racial equity in any circumstances you're in or whatever. And I was able to pull some personal and volunteer experience and say, oh yeah, well, I participated in this, and then I did this here. And to me, I was sitting here thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm just giving them these like tiny little pebbles and they're like nothing. I was just like, oh, they're not going to hire me. But they were like, oh, that's great. Like that's really good. So I think you can pull from all parts of your life to point to that experience. And I would encourage people in the meantime, I'm not saying you have to do this first before you look for a job, but if there's a specific kind of field that you want to get into with the nonprofit industry, like go start volunteering somewhere and get some experience so you can point to it.
Yeah, and I want to say a couple of things about this. One is that you're going to be really hard pressed to find somebody working at a nonprofit that actually has a nonprofit management degree. Most of the folks come from other places and other backgrounds, and they find the work because they are passionate about a mission. And nonprofits, I mean, being a nonprofit is like a 501c3, is basically just a tax status. So it means that they don't have to, in most cases, don't have to pay, they're tax exempt, and that when people make charitable donations that they can, claim them on their taxes. So it's really just, that. But really the defining thing about nonprofits is that they're oriented around mission. Their mission, whatever the mission is. So the people that work there and the people that are hiring at that nonprofit, whatever it is, want to know that you are committed to that mission. So I would say, the thing that's going to get you in the door at a nonprofit, I really think the single most thing you could do for yourself, particularly if you've not worked at a nonprofit before, is make your case as to why you believe in their mission. They want to hire people that are dedicated and are going to stay, and you're going to be much more likely to do that if you believe. So it's one of those things that I would do an internal deep dive. Yes, you need to understand, what kind of roles you're looking for, but you also need to know what kind of nonprofit you want to work for. They're very much not all the same. They serve all kinds of different missions across the map. So whether it's tied to your education expertise, or whether it's tied to something, let's say you grew up extremely poor. I mean, you can tell that story, and if you're trying to find work at an economic justice organization, for example, that's something that ties you to that cause. So whether it's expertise or whether it's personal, you need to understand those things for yourself, and then be able to put it on the page, on a cover letter, or however you want to communicate. And I think that's probably going to be your number one thing that will get you in the door with that experience.
Okay.
And
no, I just want to ask Tana this question, because I mean this was your dissertation expertise was mission statements from nonprofits, and so plug to go read that. But so like now that we're talking about this, now that we're talking about this, like how should someone, like, you can find a mission statement. How do you read a mission statement?
So the interesting thing I found while I was doing all this research is that a lot of organizations have terrible mission statements. They're not very, they're either like way too broad, and so you don't actually know what they do, or they've had suffered from something called mission drift. And so like you go to their website and you look at their webpage and it says, our mission is to blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, it is? Like, it's just like, that doesn't seem to add up. So what I would actually recommend is, I would read the mission statement, but then I would look further for the language all across their website, and especially like in their vision. If they have things, I'm trying to think of different, like our website, for example, for Equal Justice USA, we have a whole page that is just titled "What is Justice?" and it lays out our vision for transforming the justice system. And I actually think we have a really good mission statement, so I'm very happy about that. But it also, like, you read most mission statements and you go, okay, that's great, but how? And so you kind of what they want to do, but you don't really know how they're doing it. So I would definitely look for pages like that are like, what do we mean by this? And how do we do that? And then you can kind of get a better feel for sort of the theory of change that they're putting out there and how they're going about doing it.
Okay. This is so much fun. Okay. All right. If there's one thing that I appreciate, well, there are many things I appreciate. There's one thing that I really appreciate is talking to people who are passionate about what they're doing. And so I'm really excited to be talking with you here. Okay, so let's do this one. So if we have people who are thinking about going into this as a career, like if they were like, so you've been there, you've done that. and someone is thinking, wow, here is this golden opportunity, nonprofits, that I can make the world a better place. What do you want them knowing? Like we can even go like here's a good thing that you should know, and here's be careful for this thing as well. Cecily, you want to start us this time?
And I hesitate to even say this, but honestly, generally speaking, the pay is not very good. So if you're, there are, you hear all these stories about really well-paid CEOs. That is far and few between. I think typically you're going to find the positions with the highest salary scales are going to be in the development field, so fundraising. And also, I think, I really think that to get a grasp on the nonprofit industry, there's a really great website blog. This has a curse word in it, so I apologize in advance, but it's called Nonprofit as Fuck. And it's the guy who heads it up is called Zuli, and he is a thought leader in the nonprofit industry, and he outlines a lot of the misconceptions about nonprofits, internal battles that people have about, overhead and things like that. So if you're considering going into the industry, I think it'd be a really good idea to not only research individual nonprofits, but you kind of need to have an understanding of nonprofit culture as a whole. So I would check out Zuli. And Tana, anything?
I'm trying to think if I have anything to add to that. Because you kind of covered like the big caveats about it. So, you have to be passionate about the work. Because you're not typically going to get paid the same as you would in an industry job. And so, so if your goal is like, I'm going to go get rich, I'm going to work for a nonprofit, then you better work for a hospital, I guess. I don't know. There's really no, there's no magic thing to getting rich in this biz. If I could kind of maybe tie this question back to the applying to a nonprofit question, if that's all right with you, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to tell a little story about how I got my very first nonprofit job, because I think it demonstrates what you really need to do, which is you just need to go for it, and you need to be brave, and you need to just go out there and ask for stuff. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, it was in music composition, which is a super useful degree. And I did have in the back of my mind that outside of moving to Hollywood and becoming a movie composer, which was my first career choice, I kind of wanted to go into orchestra management, but I didn't put any effort into learning business management or anything. But I that's what I was interested in. And we moved to Toledo for something for my husband. And so I was looking for work. And as soon as we got here, I just called up the Toledo Symphony. I said, "Are you hiring?" And they were like, "Well, not right now. We're actually moving buildings, and we're in a big period of transition." And I was like, "Well, can I send you my resume? Will you just keep it and let me know if you're hiring?" And the person on the phone was like, "I guess, And so I did. And then I got another job in the meantime. And then I would just check my answering machine all the time. And answering machine, that shows you how long ago this was. And I don't really remember the setup, but I remember I could see phone numbers of missed calls, even if they didn't leave a message. And I recognized the number because I had their number memorized. And I got home and there was a missed call from this number. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, the symphony called me. Why would they be calling me unless it was to offer me a job?" And so I called and, because they hadn't left a message. And I was like, "My name's Tana Schiewer. Does someone call me?" And and they asked around, "Did somebody call?" And I got through to the development department, and they said, "Yeah, we held on to your resume, and we're hiring somebody in fundraising, and if you want to apply, send your stuff over. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I've never done this. But they loved like how much I wanted to work. They loved my passion there. They liked that I actually had the music competition, even though I didn't have the degrees they were asking for, because the job ad specifically asked for like business management or like a couple other different things. They liked that it was in music composition. They're like, okay, she has passion for the subject. And I had done, this would be another very long story, but I'm not going to tell it. I did do some volunteer random fundraising that it was a very random, weird circumstance and an emergency. And so in my cover letter, and I worked my way through college, so managing an international travel firm. And so I was like, I have management experience, and then I was like, and then I did this emergency fundraising thing. So like, I kind of know a little bit about raising money, like, and just like, and I love music. And so like, yeah, so even if you don't have the right exact qualifications, I say go for it anyway and tell them why your qualifications fit. And also, if there's somewhere you want to work, just call and ask. I've done that so many times.
No. I think this is also a running theme that we've had through the other sessions as well. Is the power of just calling somebody and saying, "Hey, what you're doing is interesting. Can I talk to you about it?" Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what people want to do. People like talking about themselves. It's wonderful, and you can tap that as a person. Yeah. And I feel like this conversation answers a question that Alicia had put up, is like of any tips transitioning from higher ed to nonprofit. And I think that like what I'm noticing from talking to both of you is the power of a narrative, is the power of a story. And that's what is a mission statement other than here's the story of who we are, what we do. And I think that's one thing that educators should really be tapping into if you're going to be looking into any career type transition, but especially like into nonprofits, is understanding that how do you translate that using a story. And so I think that's a cool theme that's coming up. As we're going into the next one that we have, and we've kind of, I feel like we're kind of talking about this a little bit, but the question that I have are what are some of the things that researchers and academics, educators, et cetera, that would make them a good fit, like especially that idea of channeling the passion. And I feel like we've talked about that a little bit with the different types of roles. And so can we shift this question a little bit to, what, because I think that we can all establish that educators are a good fit for higher ed. We just need to figure out what is that fit, which is a really problematic term for another conversation. So here's a question that we have from Maren. Where and how do you research for nonprofit jobs? Is there a specific place for that? Is it done on LinkedIn? Like where would you go? And then as you see a job, like you say, like to read it to make sure that it's matches your own passion. So kind of the same question of like, how would you read a mission statement? How would you read one of these job ads to kind of see if it's it would be a right feel for you? Let's Cecily, will you go ahead and start us off with that one?
Sure. So two things. One is if you live in a certain area, I would, target some nonprofits individually that you would like to work for, sort of like Tana's experience. Like you can call and say, read their blogs, read the things that they have going on just for when they, inevitably have some positions open. But in general, there are going to be a couple of resources, a couple of places where you're going to find nonprofit jobs that, you can always find them on the, typical channels like LinkedIn and Indeed and, things like that. But for nonprofits specifically, you're going to want to go to places like Idealist.org. The Council of Nonprofits has a jobs board. Netimpact.org has a jobs board. The Chronicle of Philanthropy has a jobs board. So there are a number of nonprofit focused places where you can see those listings that are going to be some of the portals that nonprofits use or think of first when they are posting their jobs. Another place you might consider, there are two. Each state, for the most part, has like a statewide organization that serves nonprofits in some way. So like in North Carolina, we have the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. Your state, wherever you are, probably has the same. They're going to be an excellent resource for that type of information. They usually post jobs and things like that. The other is if you are interested in grant writing and you're interested in development or communications, your local chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, or AFP, they typically also have job boards, and that will be like the very first place that most nonprofits post any sort of grant or development-oriented job. So those are just a few to get started.
Yeah, I would just, well, first of all, I'll note that I found my current job on Indeed. So, and then I would just note that in addition to calling places and everything, a lot of larger organizations will have a job section of their website. So you can, if there's some types of places you're interested in looking, just, look on our website. And then I don't know what other people's geography is like, but here in Toledo, we have a place called the Center for Nonprofit Resources, and it's run by the local community foundation, and they have a job board. So maybe look and see, like maybe probably starting with your local community foundation would probably be a good place to look for that type of a resource. But there might be a nonprofit specific job board located there.
Awesome. Yeah. And Alicia just asked if we could repeat all of those. And I was trying to type. I was like, board, there's so many boards.
Just copy and paste it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you could cut and paste it. Oh, yeah, that'd be great, actually. Like if you have those or another option that we can do as well, I can connect with both of you afterwards and kind of put together a list. And then we can just put it under the for our session as well on the website for HHE20.
Okay, I don't think it's letting me do the.
Okay, could you send them to me in the private chat, and I can?
Oh yeah, let me do that.
If I could add,
yeah, please.
The one specific question the person said, is LinkedIn a good place to look? And my experience is like, about LinkedIn. It's kind of, so I wouldn't just be like, I'm going to look on LinkedIn and stop there.
Yeah, nonprofits have not jumped on the LinkedIn
really
as the rest of the world has. I don't know what is the holdup, but it is.
Yeah, they're just not there as much as business.
Do you think that it could be the academic tie that it has? I don't know, because like academia and education is the same way. They don't do LinkedIn. Like honestly, I was the same way until I had to get on LinkedIn to find a job. Like I just thought it was like a place to go put resumes, but now I can organize an entire event with it. I just wonder like how that's working.
Yeah, I think people think of LinkedIn as business. It does have that association, like the people. So I don't even see people making connections through LinkedIn as much on the nonprofits in the nonprofits.
No, yeah.
Interesting.
Agreed.
Okay.
Maybe it is sort of like academia in that regard. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. We're about to wrap up to see if there are any other questions. So I'll see if there are questions that other people have in the last moment. But so we'll close out with just one more question. Is that let's just end this like on a really like just hopeful thing. Like what do you love? What do you love about working in a nonprofit?
Do you have one of us that you would like us to start? Or?
I am going to go off.
I'm used to you telling us. Yeah, I can start. I'm one of those people that really likes to feel like she's making a difference. And I don't know why I used the third person right there, but I like to feel like I'm making a difference. And working for nonprofits lets me do that. I really, really want to, I know people say this and it sounds so cheesy and everything, but I really want to change the world. I really want to make a big difference. And when we see things happen, like what happened to George Floyd, and every other, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, like you can just name so many people. And the fact that there's so many names easily right off the tip of the tongue for police brutality and things like that. Just that since the organization I work for works to stop things like that, that just pushes me even more. You see injustice in the world and you want to correct it. You want to bend the arc of the universe towards justice. So that for me, I don't think I can say any other thing is a bigger reason for me working in nonprofits, except for I do feel like it's a little bit of a softer culture. I don't know how else to say that, but it's like it's always been a more warm and welcoming culture feel to me than when I've worked in business environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, it does. It sounds a little bit, I don't know. It's like, sounds cliche, but it's really not. And the thing is that the vast majority of the people you will encounter in the nonprofit space, in the nonprofit world, are people that want to feel that exact same way and that want to make some sort of change. And so it's pretty awesome to be, in an environment where everybody has goals to change the world or change their community or whatever it is. I mean, that's just, it's as sucky as your day might be and the list of things you may have to do is long and, maybe you don't get paid enough, but you get to work every day with people that are just awesome. And
yeah,
I've also worked in business and I couldn't.
I think you expressed it well, so what you were saying, like other people too want that same thing. And that's probably the culture difference I'm feeling. Like there's always this sort of like, we're all in this together kind of a feel. Whereas in some other businessy environments, it's like some people are just like phoning it in and some people are there for the money and some people really like what they're doing, but you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not trying to disparage business environments, but there is this sort of like, we're all in this together kind of a feeling.
No, and I think that there's, and I love that because I feel like with like nonprofits and education are very similar in this way, that they pull in people who are passionate and who know how to work hard and to know how to work well and to work with people. And this is something that I've been saying off and on now for a couple of months and talking with people is that like we've never seen this before as a society to have this many teachers, this many educators, academics, who are talented, smart, just hardworking people, who are hitting the market all at once, who aren't in it for the money. Like you can't go into education to be in it for the money. You can't go into it's in the name nonprofit. You can't do it for money. It has to be that passion. And that's why I'm really excited about this panel because I feel like there are a lot of people who we talked about in a previous panel about how there's a void that enters when you are faced with the loss of a job. And when that loss of a job is also the loss of a culture like academia that's kind of crumbling right now. It's good to know that there is a parallel soft culture. I like that soft culture, like just one that is one is warm and welcoming, and one that is just full of people that are passionate and really do want to change the world, and knowing that it's not a bad thing, or it's not a bad thing to be idealistic. Like you can go and do that and have a really good, fulfilling life if you don't mind living in a parent's basement. Okay. Thank you so much. That's the time that we have. Thank you so much from Cecily and from Tana. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give them, say thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up and say what's next on our agenda. But thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Here, I'm going to click you away. Okay. This is the last session that I'm doing today, and then we're doing some more tomorrow. 9 o'clock is our first one that we have. It's going to be featuring Dr. Temptatious McCoy, Annabelle Fraser, Maya Roldan, and Sammy Waka Herrera. What can universities do to prepare students for careers, or is it already too late? Immediately after this one at 4 o'clock, we have Linda Greenfield, Careers Workshop, Networking, the Best Way to Get Your Job, and Melissa Worrells, It Matters, Mentor, Sponsor, and Coach. I really hope that you come and you participate in these activities and these career workshops today. We have some tomorrow as well. All of our thought leader panels are going to be kept on YouTube and like streamed live, so you can, or not streamed live again, but you'll be able to go and watch them and stuff. This event is just full of a whole lot of people that care about you, and so I hope that you come and listen to these people because they really do want what is best for you in a real way. So thank you so much for coming, and I will see you again tomorrow for our next